Nobody on Flight 239 from Chicago to Miami that Thursday evening expected their routine journey to become a nightmare. The Boeing 737 sat on the tarmac as passengers settled into their seats, stowing luggage and fastening seatbelts. Aaron watched from seat 16A as families organized their children, business travelers opened laptops, and elderly couples held hands. Everything seemed perfectly normal, but in exactly 47 minutes, one passenger would stand up and say 5 words that would change everything. Captain Rebecca Martinez checked her instruments in the cockpit, her 23 years of flying experience giving her confidence. "Weather looks clear after we pass the front system," she told her co-pilot James Chen. James nodded, reviewing the flight plan on his screen. "Should be smooth sailing, standard approach into Miami." Rebecca smiled. She'd flown this route hundreds of times. Nothing ever went wrong on the Chicago-Miami run. It was the most predictable flight in their schedule. But what she didn't know was that in the cargo hold below, something was already going terribly wrong. Aaron noticed him immediately when he boarded. The man in seat 23E moved differently than other passengers. His eyes darted constantly, scanning faces, checking exits, studying the crew. He wore a dark jacket despite the warm cabin temperature, and his hands never stopped moving, fidgeting with his phone, touching his pockets, adjusting his collar. Aaron had learned to read people during his years working security, and every instinct told him this man was hiding something. But Aaron kept quiet. He'd been wrong before. Maybe the guy was just a nervous flyer. The plane pushed back from the gate at exactly 6:47 p.m. Flight attendant Maria Gonzalez walked through the cabin, checking seatbelts and overhead bins. She paused at row 23, noticing the nervous man. "Sir, are you comfortable? Can I get you anything?" The man looked up sharply, then forced a smile. "No, I'm fine, just anxious about flying." Maria nodded sympathetically. "We'll take good care of you. Let me know if you need anything." She moved on, but something about his response bothered her. The tremor in his voice wasn't just fear, it was guilt. But here's what nobody knew yet. In the cargo hold, a lithium battery in an improperly packaged shipment had short-circuited 20 minutes before boarding. The battery was now smoldering, generating heat at over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Smoke was beginning to fill the hold, and within minutes it would reach critical temperature. The fire suppression system in the hold was malfunctioning, a maintenance issue that had been noted but not yet repaired. The plane was literally sitting on a ticking time bomb. Aaron settled into his seat as the plane taxied toward the runway. He pulled out his book but couldn't focus. His eyes kept drifting back to the man in 23E. The guy was sweating now, and his leg bounced constantly. Aaron watched as the man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He typed something quickly, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. Whatever he was trying to say, he couldn't find the words. Or maybe he was afraid to send it. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted smoothly into the air. Chicago's lights spread below them like a glowing carpet. Passengers relaxed, some applauding the takeoff. The nervous man in 23E gripped his armrest so hard his knuckles turned white. Maria noticed and brought him a cup of water. "Here, this might help." He took it with shaking hands, spilling some on his tray table. "Thank you," he whispered. Maria gave him a reassuring smile and moved to help other passengers. Captain Martinez leveled the plane at 35,000 feet. "Flight attendants, you may begin cabin service," she announced. Maria and her team started preparing drinks and snacks. The cabin settled into the comfortable routine of a night flight. People opened books, put on headphones, closed their eyes. Aaron tried to relax, but something felt wrong. He couldn't explain it. The air felt too still, too quiet, like the moment before thunder. Wait! Don't miss this detail. At exactly 7:19 p.m., a warning light flickered on Captain Martinez's control panel. She leaned forward, studying it. "Cargo hold temperature sensor just spiked," she said. James checked his instruments. "Could be a faulty sensor. We had maintenance issues with those last week." Rebecca frowned. The temperature reading showed 180 degrees in the aft cargo hold. Normal temperature was around 50 degrees. "That's not a faulty sensor," she said quietly. "That's a fire." James's face went pale. "Should we declare an emergency?" Rebecca's mind raced through protocols. A cargo fire was one of the most dangerous situations in aviation. They had maybe 15 minutes before the fire could compromise the plane's structure or systems. "Get me the nearest airport," she ordered. James typed rapidly. "Indianapolis is closest, 17 minutes away." Rebecca made her decision. "Alert Indianapolis Tower. We're declaring an emergency and requesting immediate landing clearance." But she didn't announce it to the passengers yet. No need to cause panic before necessary. She pressed the button for the cabin. "Flight attendants, please come to the cockpit." Maria heard the unusual request, and her stomach tightened. Captains never called attendants to the cockpit during flight unless something was seriously wrong. She walked quickly to the front, knocked, and entered. Rebecca turned to her with a calm but firm expression. "We have a possible cargo fire. We're diverting to Indianapolis. I need you to prepare the cabin for an emergency landing without causing panic. Can you do that? Maria's heart hammered, but her training kicked in. Yes, Captain. How much time? Rebecca checked her instruments. 14 minutes until landing. The fire suppression system isn't working. We need to get on the ground fast. Maria nodded and left the cockpit. She gathered her team quickly, whispering instructions. They fanned out through the cabin, casually checking seatbelts, securing loose items, preparing emergency equipment. Passengers noticed the unusual activity, but most assumed it was routine. Aaron watched Maria's face as she walked past. He'd seen that expression before, the forced calm of someone dealing with a crisis. Something was definitely wrong. He looked around the cabin. Other passengers were oblivious, laughing at movies, sleeping peacefully. But Maria's hands were shaking slightly as she secured an overhead bin. Aaron's instincts screamed at him. They were in danger. You won't believe this, but the man in 23E suddenly stood up. Maria was 3 rows away when she saw him rise. "Sir, please remain seated," she called out. But he ignored her, stepping into the aisle. His face was no longer nervous. It was determined. He looked directly at Maria and said loudly, "There's a fire in the cargo hold, isn't there?" The cabin went silent. Every passenger turned to look. Maria froze. How did he know? "Sir, I need you to sit down immediately," Maria said firmly. But the man didn't move. "I'm a cargo inspector for the FAA," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet cabin. "I loaded the cargo for this flight, and I made a mistake. There's a lithium battery shipment that wasn't properly secured. I realized it after boarding. I tried to tell someone, but I was too afraid of losing my job. But I can't stay quiet anymore. If there's a fire down there, you need to land this plane right now." Aaron's blood ran cold. The cabin erupted in shocked murmurs. A woman screamed. Children started crying. Maria pressed her call button urgently. "Captain, you need to hear this." Within seconds, Rebecca's voice came over the intercom, steady and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We are experiencing a technical issue and will be landing in Indianapolis in approximately 12 minutes. Please remain calm and follow all crew instructions." But calm was impossible now. Passengers demanded answers. The FAA inspector, whose name was Thomas Wright, stood in the aisle explaining what he knew. The battery was improperly packaged. If it's caught fire, the hold temperature could compromise the plane's structure. We need to descend immediately and prepare for emergency evacuation. Maria tried to control the situation, but fear was spreading like wildfire through the cabin. Aaron stood up. "Everyone, listen," he shouted. Heads turned to him. "Panicking won't help. The crew knows what they're doing. Follow their instructions exactly. Now here's where everything changed." Captain Martinez pushed the plane into a steep descent, requesting priority landing. Indianapolis Tower cleared all other traffic, preparing emergency vehicles. In the cabin, Maria and her team demonstrated brace positions. Thomas Wright helped, using his authority to keep passengers focused. Aaron moved through the aisles, helping elderly passengers prepare, calming frightened children. The plane shook as it descended rapidly through rough air. Rebecca fought the controls as the plane dropped faster than normal descent rates. "Temperature in cargo hold is now 400 degrees, James reported. "We're getting structural warnings." Rebecca's jaw clenched. The plane was literally burning from the inside. "How long to landing?" James checked. 7 minutes. It felt like an eternity. Rebecca keyed the radio. "Indianapolis Tower, Flight 239. We may need crash equipment. Fire in cargo hold is not contained." In the cabin, smoke began seeping through vents near the rear. Passengers screamed as they saw the gray wisps. Maria grabbed fire extinguishers, but they were useless against a cargo fire. The smoke grew thicker. People covered their mouths with clothing. Oxygen masks deployed automatically. Aaron helped passengers around him secure their masks, his own heart racing. The smoke stung his eyes. Through the chaos, he saw Thomas Wright sitting in his seat, tears streaming down his face. The man had finally done the right thing, but would it be enough? The plane dropped through 10,000 feet. Rebecca could see Indianapolis's lights ahead. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, their red and blue lights flashing. 5 minutes, she told James, but then a new alarm sounded. "We're losing hydraulic pressure," James said, his voice tight. The fire had damaged critical systems. Rebecca's hands moved across controls, adjusting, compensating. The plane's nose wanted to pitch down. She pulled back on the yoke, fighting to keep them level. "You're not seeing everything yet." At 4,000 feet, with 3 minutes to landing, an explosion rocked the cargo hold. The plane shuddered violently. Passengers screamed. Overhead bins burst open, spilling luggage. Rebecca felt the controls go soft in her hands. "We just lost primary hydraulics," James reported. Switching to backup systems, Rebecca's voice remained steady. "Indianapolis Tower, Flight 239 is experiencing multiple system failures. We need that runway clear now." Aaron gripped his armrests as the plane bucked and shook.
The smoke was thick now, making it hard to see. People were coughing, crying, praying. Maria and her team moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency despite the chaos, checking that everyone was secured. Thomas Wright sat with his head in his hands, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. Aaron looked out his window. The ground was rushing up fast, too fast. Rebecca lined up with the runway, fighting controls that barely responded. "Landing gear down," she ordered. James pulled the lever. The gear deployed, but warning lights indicated the left main gear wasn't fully locked. "We've got a gear problem," James said. Rebecca had no choice. "We're landing anyway. Brace for impact." She keyed the cabin. "Cabin crew, prepare for emergency landing. Brace positions now." Maria shouted, "Brace! Brace! Heads down! Stay down!" Throughout the cabin, passengers bent forward, hands over heads, assuming crash positions. Aaron pressed his head against the seat in front of him, his heart hammering. This was it. Through the roar of the engines and the chaos, he could hear children crying, adults praying. Time seemed to slow down. The runway lights streaked past the windows. Rebecca pulled back on the yoke, flaring for landing. The right gear touched first with a screech of rubber, then the nose gear. The left main gear hit hard, the partial collapse causing the plane to lurch violently left. Rebecca stamped on the right rudder, fighting to keep them straight. Sparks flew from the damaged gear as metal scraped asphalt. The plane screamed down the runway, slowing but not fast enough. The end of the runway approached rapidly. Inside, passengers were thrown against their restraints. Aaron's head hit the seat in front of him. Stars exploded in his vision. Luggage and debris flew through the cabin. The smoke was choking now. Through the chaos, Rebecca's voice remained calm. "Reverse thrust maximum. All brakes." James pushed the engines into reverse. The plane shook like it was tearing apart. But finally, impossibly, they were slowing down. The plane stopped 300 feet from the end of the runway. For 1 second, there was absolute silence. Then Rebecca's voice cracked through. "Evacuate! Evacuate! All passengers, evacuate now!" Maria and her team sprang into action, throwing open emergency exits, deploying slides. "Jump and slide! Leave everything! Move, move, move!" Passengers scrambled from their seats, rushing for exits. Emergency crews raced toward the plane, foam spraying to suppress the fire now visible from the cargo hold. Aaron helped people toward the nearest exit, physically lifting an elderly woman who'd frozen in fear, guiding a blind man to the slide. Thomas Wright was helping too, tears still streaming down his face as he assisted passengers. Within 90 seconds, the entire cabin was evacuated. Aaron was one of the last out, sliding down the inflatable chute and running from the plane. Behind him, flames now engulfed the rear section. If they'd stayed airborne even 3 more minutes, the fire would have reached the cabin. Emergency responders rushed to help passengers away from the burning plane. Firefighters battled the blaze with foam and water. Aaron collapsed on the grass beside the runway, coughing, his lungs burning from smoke. Around him, passengers hugged each other, crying with relief. Incredibly, miraculously, everyone had survived. Minor injuries, smoke inhalation, but no fatalities. Captain Martinez and James Chen were the last to leave the plane, evacuating only after confirming every passenger was off. But wait, there's more. As Aaron sat catching his breath, he saw Thomas Wright surrounded by airport security and FAA officials. The man wasn't being arrested, he was being thanked. His last-minute warning, despite risking his career, had given the crew crucial information. They'd been able to implement emergency procedures sooner, descend faster, and prepare for the worst. Without his confession, they might not have landed in time. Sometimes doing the right thing, even when it's terrifying, saves lives. Later, after medical checks and interviews, Aaron found Thomas Wright sitting alone in the terminal. The man looked exhausted, broken. Aaron sat beside him. "You saved us," Aaron said simply. Thomas shook his head. "I almost killed you. That battery was my responsibility." Aaron put a hand on his shoulder. "But when it mattered most, you spoke up. A lot of people would have stayed quiet. You didn't. That's courage." Captain Rebecca Martinez gave a press conference the next morning. Reporters asked how she'd managed the impossible landing. She gave credit to her training, her co-pilot, her crew. But then she said something that stuck with Aaron forever. "One passenger's honesty gave us the information we needed to act fast. In aviation, we have a saying, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground." That passenger helped us get on the ground in time. The investigation later revealed the battery fire had been seconds away from causing catastrophic structural failure. If the plane had stayed airborne another 5 minutes, the floor of the passenger cabin would have collapsed into the cargo hold. The malfunctioning fire suppression system was found to be part of a larger maintenance issue affecting multiple planes in the airline's fleet. Regulations were changed. Thomas Wright faced disciplinary action but kept his job because his honesty had prevented disaster. Aaron never forgot Flight 23-9. It taught him that justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about people choosing to do the right thing even when it costs them. Thomas Wright chose honesty over self-preservation. Captain Martinez chose her passengers' lives over her perfect safety record. Maria and her crew chose professionalism over panic, and in those choices, everyone lived. 6 months later, Aaron received an invitation to an FAA ceremony. Thomas Wright was being recognized for his actions that night. Aaron attended and watched as the man received a commendation for safety advocacy. During his speech, Thomas said something Aaron would always remember. "Fear almost kept me silent, but then I realized that my temporary comfort wasn't worth risking 300 lives. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing." Aaron thought about the passengers on that flight, now scattered across the country, living their lives because one man found courage at the crucial moment. He thought about the children who got to grow up, the families who stayed together, the futures that continued because honesty won over fear. That's what real justice looks like, Aaron realized. Not revenge or punishment, but people choosing what's right even when it's hard. Flight 239 became a case study in aviation safety schools. The rapid response, the successful evacuation, the passenger intervention, all of it was analyzed and learned from. But for Aaron, the real lesson was simpler. Power doesn't always come from authority or strength. Sometimes it comes from one person standing up and telling the truth when everyone else wants to look away. And somewhere out there, 300 people walk around every day living lives they almost lost. Most of them don't think about Flight 239 anymore, but Aaron does. He thinks about it every time he faces a choice between what's easy and what's right. He thinks about Thomas Wright's shaking voice saying, "There's a fire in the cargo hold, isn't there?" 5 words that changed everything. That's the thing about justice, Aaron learned. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's terrified. Sometimes it's just one person deciding that other people's lives matter more than their own comfort. And sometimes that's enough to save everyone.